You're on.
All right, we're starting now. What's your name? Your full name?
Okay, my full name is Steven Peter Patti.
Steven Peter Patti.
Yep.
All right. When were you born?
I was born in June the 29th, 1922 in Los Angeles County,
All right.
Los Angeles, California.
Good. When did you join the CAP?
Okay, Civil Air Patrol is what it's called is part of the Civil Office of Civil Defense. And we were citizens. We weren't in the military. When you join Civil Air Patrol, you're part of the civil defense system during the war, World War II.
Really? What did you? What kind of things did you do?
Well, I lived near an airport when I was young, and I used to go to the airport and help push the airplanes around, wash the airplanes. I was about 10, and I always wanted to be around airplanes. So when I joined the Civil Air Patrol, which was near my home, I was a teenager at the time. I was 19. I enlisted in the Civil Air Patrol at Vail Field, California. We practiced marching and drilling, and we had various speakers come to the field and talk to us and see if we were interested in going. And when war was declared, Office of Civil Defense wanted to recruit as many people that were familiar with aircraft or owned aircraft. In my case, I didn't own an aircraft, but I wanted to be with something that was relative to aircraft, civilian aircraft. So they asked me if I'd be interested in going to Brownsville, Texas, and I enlisted as a mechanic. And so in June, July of 1942, I joined the Civil Air Patrol, and within just a few days, we were driven from Los Angeles to a small city in Arizona, Quartz, Arizona, and we spent the night out on bed springs to sleep, and we were picked up by airplane, Fairchild 24, and transported to San Antonio. In San Antonio, we were bumped from the aircraft because there was some pilots that needed to get down to Brownsville Airport quicker than we needed to be there. So they put us on a train, and we got down to Brownsville, Texas the following day. And we were all staying at the El Jardín Hotel, and in as much as we were making just $5 a day, we couldn't quite afford living in the hotel. So Citco, which is an oil company, the headquarters was in Texas, and Citco was paying our rent for us, and our lodging and our food, and that's all we got was $5 a day as a per diem. So we arrived in Brownsville, Texas, and they assigned us to, as mechanics, and I was an apprentice mechanic, so they assigned us to working there at the Municipal International Airport. It's a port of entry there at Brownsville, Texas. Because we were getting bombs shortly, we moved from Brownsville Municipal Airport, International Airport, I should say, to an airport that had been shut down, abandoned, a civilian airport in the town of San Benito. And while we were there, we improved the facilities there with a building that could handle all of our functions, and also it had a hangar that we could work in. At Brownsville Municipal Airport, we had no place to do our work on airplanes. So this was much in our favor to move to San Benito Airport. So at San Benito, we had to pay our own food, our own clothes, our own tools, on $5 a day, and also medical. There was no medical. Now we were in uniform, but we were in a civilian air patrol uniform, and our uniform had red epaulets on each shoulder. That's how you could tell us apart with a patch. So you could tell us between the regular enlisted personnel and Civil Air Patrol. So we would mingle at times down in the city of San Benito, and there were military there as well. And when you meet them on the street, some people were interested, would ask us who we were and what we were doing. Well, in as much as what we were doing was secret, we couldn't have any discussions and answer their questions. And so they would call us 4F and draft dodgers. So the people that we finally got, after about 2 months, we got our arsenal of bombs, 100-pound bombs, and also 325-pound depth charges. And we had the aircraft modified with bomb racks. Now the aircraft that were larger than others carried 2 bombs, and the smaller aircraft, which were only powered with a 95 horsepower engine, could carry one bomb. And the aircraft personnel that were on patrol were usually the pilot and the observer, and they would go out early in the morning, and whichever ordered where they were ordered to go, and some would go out to sea and pick up a convoy and escort the convoy as far south as Tampico. Other aircraft would go and do the border patrol, and they were the smaller aircraft, but they didn't carry any bombs. The observer in the usually carried a submachine gun, a Thompson machine gun. They bring a can of water and some to snack on during on our border patrol, and also on sub patrol. So we did submarine patrol, we did border patrol, we did beach patrol, and we did was just an area that was picked out to look for submarines. And occasionally we would see a shadow, a silhouette in underwater, and we couldn't tell really what it was until we'd have to wait till it surfaced. We'd circle the area as long as we could. In most cases, in practically all the cases that I was familiar with, it was a huge whale. You get the whale that we could tell it was a whale for sure when it spouted and blew the water out of its breathing the way it breathes, and so we could go on about our business.
That's funny. You never encountered submarines, but you seem to have a few run-ins with whales.
Yes, and where we were.
Yeah.
Now the Civil Air Patrol has the entire group of all the times that I was aware of, they sunk one German submarine, and they damaged one. Now, in the process of doing patrol work and so forth, there were several fatalities from the aircraft, either having bad engine problems or running into bad weather or something on landing or taking off. It was a total death I think it was like 26 or 27 people that were died in the process of doing their patrol or sub patrol and so forth. Now on border patrol, we would fly low, sometimes 30, 40, 50 feet above the river, the Rio Grande River, and we had, because we were at the coast, we would fly west towards the first city that we had, where we'd stop, get fuel, and then fly back to our base. And the patrolling that I was involved with would go as far as Laredo, from Brownsville or San Benito to Laredo. Now, in one instance where I was on patrol, we were flying about 25, 30 feet above the river, and there was a man crossing the river, but he took off his shoes, and he was holding his shoes and going across the river. And when we came around the bend in the river, we startled him. He didn't know we were there until we got close. So it was close enough that I could see, like 50 feet, 25, 50 feet away, and startled him. Now there were quite a few. The observer in the airplane would have a clipboard and would write down the details of what he saw, the time of day, the type of car, number of people in the car, and which direction it was going, and so forth. And that would all be, evidence would be given to the, that had been written down, was given to our intelligence officer. He in turn would process it and give it to the government. Everything that we didn't discuss any of the flights of what you saw or what you did with anyone, but only those that had a need to know. So that was kept pretty secret. Beach patrol involved flying low, and if you saw footprints in the sand, and the footprints indicated that somebody landed it, and you could see the silhouette of their shoe, until somebody had landed, but didn't go in the water. They were coming out of the water. So we knew we had a secret night landing from a boat or some other obvious thing that would allow them to get ashore, a little rubber raft. Speaking of rubber rafts, when we first started, the first approximately 6 months, we didn't have any flotation, we didn't have any life rafts. But we did have Mae Wests, and the life rafts were one-man life rafts, and I have a lot of pictures that would be interested in going. So this is the escort. We would fly about 400 or 500 feet above and around the convoy, and they were all ships going south, and we would have 2 aircraft every time there was a sub patrol. One would be about 4 or 5 miles out ahead of the convoy, and then there was one aircraft would be circling the convoy. And what made it interesting for me, the first time I went out on the convoy, I saw these. We were close enough that I could see everybody on board and what they were doing, and what the first time I saw it, kind of made me kind of anxious. They ran for their deck guns and aircraft guns that are on the fantail of the merchant ship and the Navy ships. But till they recognized who we were,
they were getting ready to shoot you down.
Yeah, we were quite anxious up until the time. Then they'd all go below decks, and you wouldn't see them for about 20 minutes. They all come back up in their skivvies, and they're either lying down on the deck with a towel, and or doing their laundry or doing whatever they want. But we could only escort them. Excuse me. We could only escort them close enough until we got to Tampico, and that was about our fuel range, and we had to turn around and come back to our base in San Benito. So our other beach patrol would take us up to Corpus Christi. That as far north as we could get with Corpus Christi. We'd get out of the airplane and relax for a half hour or so, and then go get a drink of water, and maybe bite to eat, and then fly back down the beach again. Now, we on patrol on beach sub patrol where we weren't escorting or doing beach. we would look for submarines in a grid. We had a grid on a map, and we would take that, check all that area. There'd be 2 airplanes. we always had 2 airplanes going out over the water, and it made it safer.
Yeah.
And we were in radio contact, but the radios we were using were all antiques and very primitive compared to what the radio communication is now. The Border Patrol we were flying down the Big Bend country was part of our area and it was kind of like isolated like the desert. There's no houses, no communication. And one of our base that we were moved to later was to Marfa, Texas. And Marfa, Texas was a very small town, and it was an auxiliary airport for one of the Air Force, or Air Corps, I should say, one of the Air Corps bases for training B-29 pilots and so forth. The altitude at Marfa was around 5,000 feet, and in wintertime it would freeze. All the things that would freeze, and we stayed in the one of two buildings that were there, and then we had a hangar there that we did repairs, and we did a lot of mechanical work. We were recovering aircraft and overhauling engines and doing 25-hour, 50-hour, 100-hour maintenance on the aircraft. And I was enlisted at the time, and I was promoted several times to sergeant and master sergeant. And then occasionally I would fly on sub patrol or beach patrol or convoy or border patrol.
Is that this kind of stuff you did for the entirety of the war? Were you in CAP the whole time?
What we've been discussing, I was in CAP all the time.
Yeah.
When after about a year of being with Civil Air Patrol, they discharged us, and during the time that I was with Civil Air Patrol, on my day off, I would go hitchhike most of the time to an airport and get flying lessons. And because I was around aircraft and flying on flight tests with our aircraft and stuff, and taxiing and starting them, all types of aircraft. We had no amphibians, but I managed to get my private license, or my student pilot's license there in Brownsville, and I soloed in 4 hours. And when we was through with Civil Air Patrol, well, let me back up. While we were in San Benito, there was an air base, a regular Air Corps base called Harlingen, and because we were in the age eligible for the service, we made an agreement that we signed that after they gave us these orders, we would enlist in the Air Corps as enlisted men, and they would call us to duty when we were through with Civil Air Patrol. So after about a year, we disbanded the Civil Air Patrol that we were doing, because the Navy and the Air Corps finally had enough aircraft and enough trained personnel to hunt submarines. We didn't have to do that anymore. They took over what we were doing. So when I was discharged from Civil Air Patrol, I was a.
Were you enlisted into the Air Corps?
I enlisted in the Air Corps, and they gave us basic training, and because I knew I was familiar with training and so forth. They advanced me quite rapidly from a private in the Air Corps to a sergeant, and I taught close order drill to the new recruits who was coming into the Air Corps, and I finally got my private pilot's license because they transferred me to Clovis, New Mexico, and there I worked on B-17s and B-25s and cargo aircraft and AT-6s and C-45 twin engine.
A lot of everything. A bit of everything.
Yeah, it was everything. B-29s, I worked on B-29s. So because I rejoined, when I got out of the service, I rejoined Civil Air Patrol, and by that time I had a private pilot's license, and because of my GI service, they allowed me some money to get more licenses. So I got my commercial license. I got my instrument license. I got the seaplane license, and I got a glider pilot. So I had all those, and being a flight instructor now, I went back to Civil Air Patrol, and I started flying again with Civil Air Patrol whenever there was some need for search and rescue. I made a number of search and rescue missions from the airport that I was flying at. I'd go out and do search and rescue in the Sierra Mountains, up near Bishop, up in that area, and I would do beach patrol for looking for lost aircraft on the mountains and deserts of Southern California. And as I was promoted to a lieutenant in Civil Air Patrol, and I did a lot of flying with my airplane that I bought. I bought an airplane that I could teach people to fly. So I had all the licenses that I needed. I had a mechanic's license. I had an instructor's license. I had a commercial license.
At this point, you could do whatever you wanted, essentially.
I could do just about everything. I had everything but a helicopter, and I didn't want to get a helicopter license. And I used to give the Civil Air Patrol students and cadets rides in my airplane and let them fly. So, after the war, I continued with Civil Air Patrol, and they eventually, Citco, to show their appreciation, Citco is the oil company during World War II. They gave me this Congressional Gold Medal.
Really?
And I got this a couple of years ago.
Is it recording?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this was signed by the president, and also here, I'll take it out.
It was signed by the President of the United States.
And signed by the President of the United States.
Can you see it okay?
Uh-huh.
Can I see it?
Zoomed in.
Thank you.
Now it's quite heavy, but it's not cold.
Probably brass, I assume, or bronze.
Mhm. So,
I'm gonna pause